Hi, Shannon and Michael from Healthcare Genius here. We are here to talk to you today about open enrollment and what you should be thinking about.
It's open enrollment?
And Mike knows it's open enrollment because he has
I
been,
think a couple hours I'll be doing meetings.
yeah, and he's been just go, go, go. It's a really busy time of year for us. So wanted to kind of take a step back and tell you when we talk to our clients, what kinds of things we talk to them about and what you should really be thinking about. So how's it going, Mike? Are you alive?
I'm alive. I got a break. So, before we started all of this, had a nice little trip. So, yep, it just started to kick off today. I think we have probably 10 meetings this afternoon with employees to go through strategies on with one of our groups, and we'll be doing that all week.
Awesome.
But I thought today what we would do is just talk a little bit from an employer perspective and an employee perspective. What are the benefits that employers are offering? What are some of the ones that they're not offering, or maybe they're not as many employers are offering those, and kind of walk through them and explain why they're important from both the employer perspective and the employee perspective.
Great. And yeah, I thought it was really interesting because a couple months ago we came across a LIMRA study that shows what employers are offering versus what employees need and value. And I thought that was so interesting because when we were going through the list of all the different things, those are kind of the things that we tend to go through and talk with our clients about when open enrollment is starting to come around. And so, yeah, that's what we're going to do today is just kind of walk through each of these things and tell you about some things to look for. We'll have some follow-up videos that'll go into more depth about each of these things.
So the first thing, obviously, health insurance tends to be the biggest offering that most employers have, although not all employers. A lot of small employers don't offer health insurance, and that's just because of the affordability side of things. We're going to see as we go forward into 2020, there's a new program called a health reimbursement account that a lot of small employers are going to be able to access to be able to provide benefits to their employees without having to provide a group health plan. So we think that's going to be important as we go forward in the future.
Yeah, so that's really exciting for a lot of employers. And another thing that we're seeing going into 2020, traditionally individual health plans have been really expensive, and we're starting to see those costs even out a little bit compared to what group health plans are like. So yeah, definitely something to look out for if you're a small employer particularly. Definitely you should look into that.
Yeah, in the state of Colorado, there was a law that was passed to provide reinsurance for insurance companies. So that's one of the things here, at least in this state, that's impacting individual health rates. They're going to, I think we saw 20-25% decreases across the board. So that'll help people who have individual health, and again, may be attractive to individuals who are employers who are looking to offer some sort of a benefit to their small employers, to their employees. Another piece, retirement plans. Of course, we know those are important. Again, a lot of employers offer those, but not as many as you'd think. I think the LIMRA study showed about 60% of employers that they surveyed had a retirement plan.
Yeah, and one thing to think about when you're thinking about retirement is really what does healthcare in retirement look like? And a lot of people just assume that Medicare covers it and you're good to go. And that's not really the case. And so one of the things that we do is really encourage our clients to make sure that you're accumulating money in the most tax efficient way possible. So the best way to pay for healthcare in retirement by far, without a doubt, is through HSAs. And so if you're an employer, might be something that you want to think about if you're not already, is how do you make sure that you're offering your employees the ability to contribute to HSAs? Maybe some of you are helping contribute, which is great. And if you're an individual, definitely want to consider contributing to an HSA if you have the option. Put as much money in there as you can, because when you retire, you'll need it and you'll want it to be tax-free dollars.
No, that's great advice, Shannon. And there's a number of vendors out there now who are offering a combination of health savings account as part of the 401k plan, so that while they're a separate plan, they essentially allow employees to manage their health savings account inside their retirement plan account. So they can invest it like they're doing their regular 401k. So that's pretty attractive. We think we'll see more of those. And then the other thing is Roth accounts. So if you can't do an HSA or you don't have a high deductible plan, still important to be thinking about Roth accounts. And if you're an employer who doesn't have Roth options, right now you should be thinking about adding them. Mm-hmm. But also if you're an employee and you have that option, you should be thinking about putting some money into that Roth account because it will come out tax-free when you're retired, and you can use that to pay for the healthcare costs.
Absolutely.
A couple other benefits, dental vision are always big programs that employees like to have in their benefits. So that's definitely something, not as big as the health insurance. We don't see that quite as big, but
and one of the reasons that employers do that, like the study shows, it's important to employees to have those benefits, but it also can benefit the employer when it comes to health insurance as well, because we've seen studies that have said, people who take care of their dental health, maintain good dental hygiene, have less health-related or health issues that are related to your oral health. And so you can long-term save money on healthcare costs if you're taking good care of your teeth and your mouth. And on the vision side, we've also seen lots of studies that say that in eye exams and things like that, people have identified other health problems. So two things that are important to employees, but they're important to employers as well. So.
And then life insurance, a number of employers offer employer-paid life insurance. The advantage at the employer level and the employee level is that you can offer $50,000 of group term life. It's not taxable to the employee, but oftentimes that's of course not enough for individuals to have. So employers will offer all sorts of various voluntary life programs, including we're seeing more permanent programs, because as we talk about retirement and people having life insurance, when you leave your company or when you go to retire, a lot of times those policies are not convertible or they're very expensive if you're going to convert them. So people who are getting to retirement, they leave a company, they end up with no life insurance and they still may have a need.
Yep. One thing as an employer that you really should be thinking about is life insurance if it's not something that you offer, because as you'll see on the study, it is one of those things that employees really do care about, and there's a big need that's not being met by a lot of employers. So it'll go a long way for your employees if that's something that you offer to them as a benefit.
Yep, and there's a lot of, as we said, these permanent policies now where it's there's universal life, there's whole life, there are policies with long-term care riders on them. So again, we're seeing those have a big uptake, and employees are, once they learn about them, are interested in having those covered. Of course, two of the big things that we think are really important are short and long-term disability. A number of employers, although not as many, when 2008 came around and employers were looking at cutting back, those were some of the policies that they cut back on. But we do see that there's a big interest at the employee level on that.
Do be aware that your employer can only cover so much of your income with a short-term or a long-term disability policy. So if something happens to you and you're unable to work and you have one of these policies, that's great, but do be aware of the fact that it's not going to replace the entirety of your income, and it's also taxable. So we do have a lot of clients whose employees consider individual disability insurance in addition to their group insurance. And so, yeah, definitely something to be thinking about as an individual. And if you are an employer, it's a good thing to educate your employees about in the case that something like that does happen.
Yeah, and to Shannon, some of the larger or higher compensated employees, a lot of the disability policies will max out at a certain salary level, so $6,000 or $10,000. So there are programs out there that where you can buy additional coverage for those individuals who have maxed out where they are on the disability. Some benefits that typically we see these commercials, Aflac, the duck, everyone I think knows the Aflac duck. Some of the other policies that are starting to gain traction, although with the Limmer study, they're still under 30% of the employers that were surveyed are offering these types of coverages, but those are accident, critical illness, hospital policies.
Cancer plans.
Yeah, cancer plans. Policies that help cover things in the event something happens to you, because we all know with those higher deductibles that we're seeing on health insurance that employees are still having to pay out of pocket on some of those.
Right, and these can be voluntary plans. So as you can see in the study, it is important to a lot of employees to have this type of coverage, but a lot of these plans are voluntary. And so as an employer, there's not a really big risk to offering these. And then your employees can be educated and make the decision, what's most important to them and have that option.
And then I think the final benefit, touched on it just briefly on the long-term care side, but is long-term care insurance. What we saw in the study was that almost half of employees were interested in it when only about 25% of employers were offering any sort of an offering there.
Right, I think that's the biggest want and need from employees that's not being met by their employers. And I think one of the reasons that we're seeing that is because almost everybody has a personal experience with a loved one that has gone through needing long-term care, whether it's home assistance or having to, put your grandparents or your parents in a nursing home or assisted living. It happens to a lot of us. I mean, I think the numbers are staggering. People are always surprised to hear that about 60% of people over their lifetime at some point will need long-term care. And it's not covered by Medicare, it's not covered by your normal health insurance. So it really is a big need. It's justified to say that people really need it. And so as an employer, we think it can really be a difference maker. And in addition, there are a lot of tax benefits for employers to offering long-term care insurance for their employees. So huge opportunity there for employers is what we think.
Yeah, no, that's right. So this has just been, an overview of some of the things to be thinking about. If you're an employer and you're not offering these plans, at least on a voluntary basis, you should be thinking about it. If you're an employee and your employer isn't offering this plans, you might want to go to your HR department and see what the viability of them adding these programs to your employee benefit mix.
Yeah, that's right. So whether you're an employer or an individual, if you'd like to become a client of ours, feel free to click the link on our description below and make sure to subscribe to our channel and click on the bell to be notified when we come out with new videos.
Thank you.